Hello. So, first of all, apologies for my voice. As you can probably hear, I've still got the awful cold that I've had all week, but I actually feel okay. So, we're going to do a quick flight because several people had mentioned that I did like procedural videos about doing things in the Antonov 225 to do with, getting the aeroplane started and operating the autopilot, but I hadn't actually done a whole flight. So, we're going to do one. So if we have a look at little nav map, I've sketched out a route from Edwards Air Force Base down southwest towards Point Mugu on the coast. So there's a few waypoints involved, and just to see how the navigation systems work in the aircraft, really. Okay, so let's go and jump inside the Antonov and see how we get started. So first things first, we're going to jump across the cockpit and go and turn the batteries on. So let's turn those on. I'm just going to check the volume levels of my recording while we're doing this. That's all looking okay. I'm just going to check Windows Mixer as well, because it has a habit of kicking me when I don't look at it. Okay, that's the batteries done. Then over here we go and turn on the auxiliary power unit, which is overhead. So we turn on the fire control, then the air bleed, then the master start switch, and then we start the left APU, and the needle should start moving anytime soon, and there it goes. And then we do exactly the same for the right hand APU controls. So we turn on the fire control, we turn on the air bleed, we turn on the master switch, and then we press the start button. And then that needle should follow the other one around. Okay, so while we're waiting for the APU to come up to speed, it takes a few moments, we're going to go, this is the rectifiers, so we're going to go and turn those on. Okay, and next to it we're going to turn the transformers on. Then on the other side of the cockpit, we're going to go and turn on the master switches for the avionics, which is all of these. So you can see the various radios are powering up as we do this. Okay, and then we go above the pilot and the co-pilot and we turn on the bus cutoffs. For that one doesn't work, for the pilot and the co-pilot, so they get the avionics working on each side of the cockpit. There's also some lights over. Oh, I've just done the lights, sorry. I'm not very good with the keyboard today. I've just turned all of the lights on, which is not entirely accurate to do that. Oh, and if you were just wondering about operating these fans, the switches are here and here to switch the fans on. So we'll leave those running for a bit and have a look further down. So we've done the instrument masters, we've done the avionics. FADEC is next, the electronic throttle control system, which is up here. So we turn all of those on. Then we do the engine start, which is down here. So we open this panel, we press the bottom button there, and then we hold this button in for a moment. It starts to switch on, and then you will see the engines come up to speed. So these lights will come on in sequence over the next few minutes. So while that happens, we will go and program our flight plan. Okay, so we're going to say enter twice on the GPS and wait for it to capture the satellites, and then we'll program our route, which is basically just a few waypoints just to prove the point that the aircraft will follow them. Okay, so wait for the acquisition to happen. Come on. And there we go. So we press the flight plan button, we put the focus into the box, we turn the inner wheel, and then we go KEDW is our point of departure, which is Edwards Air Force Base. And then we're going to end up at Point Mugu, which is KNTD. So Kilo November Tango Delta Point Mugu, enter. Then if we go and insert the other waypoints, all we have to do is put them in on top of Point Mugu and it will insert them in for us. So we want Jaeger as the first one, so we can use the keyboard all the time to do this because it's much faster. So there's Jaeger and press enter, and then we want to go to CAGSI, so click on that, CAGSI SI. I think there's a few race conditions in the programming of this that go on. It's a common software development issue. WOTOK is the next one. WOTOK. Enter. Then on to FELMI. So FELMI. Enter. And then finally CIELO. CIELO. Enter. So there's our entire route. So if we zoom out on the GPS, we can get a sense of where it goes. Zoom back down in again. Okay. So while that's been happening, the engines have been coming up to speed, and you can see they're kind of getting there. We've got 3 of them so far. So I'm going to pause recording while that's going on. Actually, no, before we pause recording, let's go and talk a little bit about the master control panel for the autopilot. So we need to go and set target altitude. So if we say 10,000 feet, that will fly up to, because Edwards is at about 2,500 feet or 2,300. So we'll climb out to 10,000 feet. Now this is in meters in the Antonov 225. So 10,000 feet in meters is 3,048. So if we go a little bit more than that, we'll be going up to 3,100. So let's go. You can do this exactly. There's an option in the tablet to go in ones instead of hundreds. Obviously we're not doing that. We're going to set the target airspeed as well. This is in kilometers per hour, not nautical miles per hour. So 250 knots would be 463. So we'll set this out for 400 to begin with, just to give ourselves some leeway there. So we're just holding shift on and rolling the mouse wheel to take it out to 400 kilometers per hour. Okay, so you can see we've now got 1, 2, 3, 4 engines running. The 5th one is coming up. So if we go and look outside, you can actually see that's going on. So I'm going to pause recording and I'll come back when it's done. Okay, so engines are all up and running. So the next thing we do once we've got the engines up and running is go and turn the generators on. So if we scoot back down to the right side of the cockpit, underneath the rectifiers you find the switches for the generators, so we're going to turn those on. And then once we've got the generators on, we can worry about turning the APU back off. Now there is a specific sequence to this as far as I understand. So we go for fire, stop, fire, bleed and master. So stop, fire control, bleed, master, then recage. We can recage that now, to be honest. So stop, fire controlled, bleed and master. And you can see the needles falling off there. Okay, so we are pretty much ready to taxi now. So let's go and jump across to the cockpit. Well, if we just have a quick look at this tablet, we can load the plan from the GPS. So that will give us the departure and destination airfield, and also it will give us the weather, which is quite useful. We're not actually carrying any payload, so we don't anticipate it being difficult to take off at all. Something else we might want to do is go and set the heading bug to the runway direction. So you use this roller on the center pedestal to move the heading bug. So it's about 225 degrees, is it, at Edwards? Let's have a quick look. 226. So it doesn't have to be exact. So we're going to spin the heading bug around. You can see it moving over here. I'm going to spin it round to 226 degrees, which is there or thereabouts. Okay, we'll check the barometric pressure is done. Yes, that's done as well. So there's the altimeter, and it's in tens of meters on the digital readout here, or the number readout, and then obviously you've got a needle as well. You've got on the indicated airspeed, obviously that's kilometers per hour, and you've also got Mach number in the middle. So just to have a quick look at the master control panel for the autopilot, we will be using two modes primarily as we play around with this for climbing. So on the left hand side, the wheel you can see with the how would you put this, climb rates on it, is the vertical hold control. So you press the button beneath it which sets vertical hold. So as soon as you press that, the aeroplane will maintain the pitch that it's at, but then you can use, and this wheel will move to match the pitch you're at. As soon as you move that, then obviously the aeroplane will retrim itself, and it will do it quite violently, and it's not very accurate. If you want to control vertical or climb rate or descent rate more accurately, the button over to the right of the blue one on the master control panel is called pitch hold, and it uses the wheel down here, so it uses gyros to sense the pitch of the aircraft, and it's slower to react but much more accurate. So while we're flying along, you can see there's the first setting you can use on the autopilot for lateral navigation is just for the course mode, which is going to follow the heading bug basically. Around the other side you obviously got VOR there as well, so you can fly VOR radials, but there's also navigation mode. If you notice the first three letters of navigation in Cyrillic there, they correspond down here. So you've got the VORs here, and you've got the navigation mode, yeah, and course mode. So you can make sense of those yourself to fly, to get the autopilot to follow the course, to follow the GPS route, or to follow a VOR radial if you so wish. Something that's a bit odd is the VOR radios are behind you, so obviously it's somebody else's job, not the pilot's job. So anyway, I'm just going to pause quickly. I just need to go and sort something out, and then we'll get going. Okay, just had to go and answer the door, so back again, and we are ready to get going, I think. So parking brake off. We're going to move the flaps to takeoff position, which will be full flaps for the Antonov, and the sim has frozen. Would you believe it? We're sat here doing nothing and the sim has frozen. Okay, so we're going to taxi out to the right at Edwards. So there's a small amount of positive thrust in the engines when they're idle. You can see the flaps are travelling. Takes them a while in the Antonov. Okay, so when we take off, we will actually try and go for heading mode, or course mode I should say. Should we turn these fans off now? They're a bit annoying, aren't they? Takes them a while to spin down. Okay, just double checking things around the cockpit. making sure I haven't forgotten anything along the way. Looking good so far. If anybody's wondering why I haven't looked at the fuel pump buttons, as far as I'm aware, they are in the correct position. I've had a little bit of an experiment with them in the past, and started the aircraft, or even pressed Control E, because this aircraft was obviously developed for a SOBO by Builds. So it responds to Control E to automatically start everything up. If you use Control E, the buttons on the fuel pumps don't actually change, meaning they are in the right place to start with. Unless I've made a mistake with that. But I've done a long flight with it and I've not had an issue with fuel, so I'm hoping that I'm not doing anything colossally wrong there. Okay, so let's get on the brakes and roll this out onto the runway, and then we'll get on our way, shall we? It's a huge runway here, isn't it? Okay. So full throttle. We'll be looking for the indicated airspeed to get into the region where the first marker is on its border, to rotate, and with full flaps it should be incredibly light on the nose, around about that speed range. So it shouldn't take much effort to lift the aircraft off the runway. We're not carrying any payload either, so we need to be careful not to overspeed immediately. So we pull up, and it came up incredibly easily, and we're climbing straight away. So gear up, and we can start feeding the flaps out straight away, feeding back stick in, or we can even use elevator trim, which is very, very sensitive on this aircraft. You need to dab the elevator trim. Okay, so we're going to go and turn the autopilot on, and we're going to go and turn the auto throttle on. So it's holding pitch at the moment. If you remember, we can say we want it to follow our course, or if we go and change this over to navigation mode, notice it's gone to wing leveling mode. We have to press this again, and now it's going to follow the GPS track. So the reason it's going sideways is because we are off to the right. Sorry, we're off to the left of the GPS track. So you can see it's now going to crab left again to get back onto it, which we can see happening over there probably as well. So in terms of controlling the climb rate, we can go and click. Well, it's gone onto this mode automatically when we enabled the autopilot, so we can influence the climb rate by using this wheel, and you can see it's quite slow to react. So auto throttle, it's going to get to about 400 knots and hang out there. We're going to lift the flaps further and wait for the aircraft to climb out now. So throttles are reacting all on their own. Just sit up in the seat a little bit so we can see. There's a lot of glare outside, isn't there? The sun is not helping us, and we're in cloud as well. We may actually have few clouds switched on. Should we go and double check that? So it'd be nicer if we had real weather, wouldn't it? Yeah, it's not doing. There we go. So real weather is probably going to be incredibly, like, not a cloud in the sky, because this is the high desert in the US. That's a bit more interesting, isn't it? We'll probably get some, we get some clouds out on the coast, which will make it a bit more interesting on the way in. So we're climbing out to 10,000 feet at about 3,000 feet a minute. Or in terms of this aircraft, 3,100 meters. We can actually, we can't increase in speed. We have to stay below 250 knots, below 10,000 feet. So we can't accelerate until we get there. You can see on the altitude meter we're at 2,600 meters at the moment, just coming through 2,700, so this is in tens, which is interesting. If we wanted to see what's actually going on with this, we can go and switch it over to HAB, which obviously is not HAB, it's navigation in Russian. So that shows we are on the GPS track. From the HSI perspective, so the course deviation indicator smack bang in the middle, which should agree with this, and it does. We are smack bang on track. So you'll see it deviate off just while we're flying along, obviously, because we are in navigation mode, but that doesn't mean we have to have the HSI in that mode. It's completely independent. So we could go and tune in this VOR over here. Oh, it's not VOR, actually, it's a Vortec. It won't work with Vortec stations, I don't think. We'll try it. 11435. So if we look behind us and key in 11435, and let's see if we switch this over to VOR1. Oh, we are getting a signal. Okay. So if we were to play around with the course, then we could obviously influence that. Or sorry, the radial. So if we were to spin, this is where it becomes a problem. So 2-1, we think it's probably from us. We measure distance. It's probably about 232 degrees. So if we spin this round to 232, we should find out that HSI is now in the middle. It's close enough. It's just off to the right. So in the time it took us to do it, it drifted off probably. It's getting further and further away, isn't it? Obviously, because we are travelling past it. Yeah, so it's getting further and further off to the left of us for that radial. So that all works nicely. If we turn this back to navigation mode, then obviously it reflects our route, and you can see we are on the route over on the GPS, so that's all good. So we are now at 3,000 feet, so we can speed up. Sorry, 10,000 feet, so we can speed up. So we'll take it out to 550 kilometers an hour. So here comes the engines. So 10,000 feet. If you think in terms of 3 miles per 1,000 feet for descent, we want 30 miles to descend from 10,000 feet down to the ground. So we can measure that out here. So from the apron, if we do a measure, so that would have been 10. It's gonna, yeah, it's put top of descent out here, look, which makes sense. So it's about the same for us in the Antonov. So at this 30 mile top of descent marker that it had for the CRJ in Little Nav Map, we can use the same marker. So you can see this plane's happily just following the GPS track. You have to be careful. If you change modes here, then the tracking of the autopilot tracking the doing lateral navigation will switch off, and it will just go to wing leveling mode. I can show you what happened. If I went to VOR2, it's gone to wing leveling. If I go back to nav mode, I have to go and switch it back on to follow it. Yeah, so just to go and work through these buttons, that's the master switch obviously. Then you've got auto-throttle. Then you've got the reset button. Then you've got the wing leveling mode. You've got the course following mode, so obviously the course mode is chosen on the wheel above. Then you've got pitch hold, and then you've got 2 speed modes. You've got the Mach mode and velocity mode. So they're similar to the speed modes that you see in things like the CRJ, where you set a speed over here and then the throttle is independent of that. So if you have excess thrust, it will be turned into climb rate. Okay, so we're flying out across the hills now. Let's see how that's going. Off towards Wotok. We should be able to get the display down here to tell us what's going on. So if we roll this back, there we go, we can get this arc mode, which gives us lots more information about the leg we're on and where we're going next. So we're going from Kagsi to Wotok, 22 miles to run. It's very good, isn't it? So that's just typical. That's the GNS 430 basically that's been shoehorned in. I'm not sure how accurate that is, if the real aircraft had a GNS 430. I believe some models, or some throughout its history, it has had the Garmin in it. But it may not have started with one. Obviously it almost certainly didn't start with one because of the era in which it was developed. I think the final mode on the navigation is approach mode, but I don't know if it works very well. I think the Antonov engineers have been quoted as saying they never finished it. So approach tends to be flown completely by hand in the real aircraft, which is fine because it handles so easily. It's not an issue. Okay, so we're getting near to top of descent. So we're going to get rid of that extra speed. So we need to come back down to 400 knots or thereabouts. 450 is 250 knots. But we'll give ourselves some way out of that, and we'll use the spoilers. So we're pulling the spoilers on. You'll see the speed is now bleeding off. If we have a look outside, spoilers are right the way along the top of the wing. So then we'll take the spoilers back off and just let it coast as it comes down to 400 knots again. The reason we're getting the speed off is so we can descend. We don't want to be doing faster than 250 knots below 10,000 feet. Okay, so rather than being in any sort of hurry to descend, let's have a play with descending. There's going to be no green banana in this aircraft to estimate our descent, so we are going to figure it out for ourselves. If we go for about 1800 feet per minute, what we can do, there's actually a calculator in here. If we put 1800 in here, we want 548 or 550 meters. Now I think this is actually in feet, or it might be. We'll find out, won't we? We've got a standby attitude indicator which does show feet and indicated airspeed in knots, so it's quite useful. So let's start this coming down then, shall we? So we are going to come down to 0 feet. So we'll bring this all the way down to 0. We'll go for pitch mode on the, what's it called again? Pitch hold mode. And we'll get this descending. So you can see as I'm rolling this forwards, the throttles are coming back because it's wanting to accelerate. So I am going to go and pull the spoilers out to help us. So while we're on our way down, we'll also go and program the ILS. So 109.3, 212 degrees. So 212 and 109.3. And we can make the HSI show that for us, although it won't make much sense to show it yet. There's some big hills in the way, haven't we? We need to be careful of that. Our route will take us left. Yeah, so we're going to come down. That's going to go over that peak, isn't it? If we go, oh, we'll be fine. We've got lots of room. So we're just watching the aircraft come down now and just keeping an eye on its descent rate. So let's have a look on this map if we zoom out a little bit. Felmy is next in 3 minutes. 13 miles away. Is Felmy the final turn? Yeah, before we straighten up for the runway. So the other thing we can do to help us is start extending flaps. So we'll just go for the first stage of flap, and we're using that instead of spoilers basically. So we look outside, you will see that the wings are starting to change shape. There we go. Notice that has absolutely nailed our descent rate. So it's having to re-trim to re-establish the rate we wanted. We'll get rid of some of that speed again. So we'll go for 350 kilometers per hour. So we're just going to cross over these hills that we can see directly in front of us and then follow the path in basically. If we go and turn on the VOR1, we will see we've picked up the localizer already. I'm not sure that's actually picked up the glide slope yet. We'll see when we get there. So obviously that's going to slide in from the left when we get closer. We're still following GPS at the moment. We're just looking at the HSI reflecting the VOR radio. Okay, it's looking good, isn't it? We're at 3,700 feet, slowly dropping. We need to be at about 2,500 when we get past Cielo. So we're looking good at the moment. 3,400. I'm just watching the standby attitude indicator. It's quite a handy reference at times. So we're going to get the gear out now. So we go and watch it extend. And it's making the turn towards the runway, which you can now see directly in front of us. Let's see how much of a mess it makes of it. So it's overshot slightly, look, and it's correcting. So this is the point at which, according to the real pilots, they kind of take over. So we may well do the same. We'll keep an eye on, yeah, we've picked up the glide slope now. The red marker has gone. So from here on in, we can go and switch the autopilot off, switch the auto throttle off. Let's do it ourselves now. So flaps to the next position. So I'm gonna stay level and fly into the glide slope. So I'm waiting now for this marker to come down. I'm going to go full flaps already. Just trimming slightly. We're going to keep an eye on this speed as well. We don't want to get too slow. It's tempting to fly it on the trim, but I don't want to. So we're descending. I really don't want to descend. Getting a bit slow. Okay, let's level out for a while. Fly into the glide slope and then descend down on it. Those flaps really do give it a lot of drag. Awful lot. It's moving around. Then maybe there's some turbulence coming off those hills. Right, we're much happier with the speed now. We should see the glide slope soon. You would think. I haven't actually checked. I wonder if this airfield actually has a glide slope. You'd think I would have seen it by now. Ah, unless the runway doesn't start till halfway down. It's a bit late to check, isn't it? Yeah, there's no glide slope. It only has a localizer by the look of it. Which is why the needle hasn't lit up. So that's on me for not checking before I planned the route. So we're actually now coming in quite steeply, but this is well possible for the Antonov. It's very good at short takeoff landings. The spoilers absolutely kill the lift. Okay, we're looking perfect. And we're down. Almost didn't feel it. Let's stop it from swaying its way across the runway. So we have got reversers. They're not tremendously effective, or they are at higher speeds I believe, but not at lower speeds. So you can obviously throw the spoilers out as well. But once you get below about 150, apparently the reversers don't do much. So there you go. We saw a flight from A to B in the Antonov. Obviously I was looking for a glide slope that wasn't there, which was a colossal lack of planning on my part, but you saw, you know, how to operate the airplane. And it was quite good in a way, because you saw how effective the spoilers are for coming down steeply. They absolutely destroyed the lift. And it, you know, it sank. But it was, you know, very, very docile and easy to control as it did sink. Okay. So obviously coming in, you could go, this is where you need an extra pair of hands, like another person in the cockpit, funnily enough. You really want the APU on when you come in. So as you're taxiing back, you would be firing up the APU in case you don't have ground power. So we're just going to park out in the middle of here, I guess. So let's do that now. If we stop the aircraft, put the parking brake on, we'll go and fire the APU back up, and that will allow us to then shut the engines off. So it's just the reverse of what we did earlier. So we start the APU, we'll see the needle come round, do the same on this side. Come on, aeroplane. What are you playing about it? It just took a while, didn't it? So this side should go as well. Give it a moment to spin up. There it goes. So obviously once the APU is up and running and providing electrical power, you can see the exhaust gas temperature of the two APU systems there, by the way. So once this gets up to 100%, we'll go round. Actually, it would be interesting to see if this fails anything. So if we go and pull the shutoffs for the engines, they're under here, by the way. So let's see if the crossfeed causes any issues with those. They're probably going to be at 100% by the time we do it, aren't they? Is it going to be okay with it? I think we're okay. We're just getting lots of warnings about hydraulic pressure, basically, because we've got no engines running anymore. Anyway, obviously you can run around the cockpit switching off all the switches we switched on at the start if you really wanted to. There's not much point to doing it, but we'll quickly run around. So we can go and turn avionics back off and lights back off. So we had the lights on, didn't we? So we're going to turn all the lights back off. We'll turn off the avionics on the pilot side and on the co-pilot side. And then back down in the cockpit, we are going to go and turn off the master switches for the avionics up here. We're basically doing everything in reverse order that we did earlier, which is not complicated really. So the generators can come off over here. Now the engines aren't running anymore. The transformers can come off. The rectifiers can be switched back off. And then this can all be switched off again. So oh, sorry, we have to do that first, don't we? Doing things in the wrong order now. So the needles should both fall. There they go. We cover those. And then finally we can go and turn the batteries off, and we're back to cold and dark again. So there you go, a flight from A to B using all the toys in the toy box and having a little play with GPS navigation, looking at VORs and making a mistake on the approach of presuming there was going to be a glide slope. But it was all good because, you know, you get to see how to deal with those things. But yeah, there you go, the Antonov 225, an actual flight in it for a change, instead of just monkeying around with one thing or another. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there, and I will hopefully see you again soon.